Hello guys, in this video I am going to bully kids on Roblox chess. I always wanted to try this game for a while just to see the skill of Roblox players and shit. I will play against 2 ranked players, 1 casual and 2 matches with the bottom. Let's move on to the video. He played e4, so I responded with pawn c6. In this game I played the Caro-Kann, pretty basic so far. He trades his e-pawn for my d-pawn. I am comfortable with this position so far, even though my pieces aren't developed enough. We both develop our knights and continue developing our bishops. I pinned his knight with my white square bishop so that if he misses anything I can take the pawn on d4. We trade pieces after he kicked my bishop. He pinned my knight on f6, so of course, I had to defend it with bishop e7. We both castle here. And now the d4 pawn is hanging, a blunder. Bishop takes knight c6 would have been the best move for him. He moves his queen to e3, attacking my knight. Here I use a tactic instead of keeping it at d4 with bishop e4, and knight to c6 threatens d4, a fork, and we both trade pieces here. After a while, he plays knight b5, not a good move. In this position a6 is clearly better, but chess.com wants me to play bishop takes b2. A fork by my bishop. I don't know why he played knight c4 while rook b1 is better. I took his free knight on c4, and he plays rook b1. I was about to take the bishop on d3, but I realized my bishop was hanging, so I moved it to d4. There are a lot of good moves here for white, but I saw my b-pawn was hanging, so I just tried to be defensive with rook to b1. I messed with the settings for a bit and found Obama mode. Here he played rook b3. Why do people send a draw request when they lose? A simple tip is that when you're up a piece, trade all your pieces except for pawns, even though it may doesn't work and can lead you to a draw or defeat. But this method is very important to good and experienced players. In this game, I try to trade my queen. He doesn't want to trade with me, so I move my bishop back to f6 and open the d-file for my rooks. And he blundered his queen. First victory. To be honest, this was such an easy game. So, after the game, I went on to chess.com and reviewed it. It showed that I have a 98.9% accuracy and an estimated yellow of 2,500. Now, let's move on to my second game. I got paired against a guy named Papyrus, and right off the bat, he looks like a strong player. My rooks glitched out a bit. I started with d4, and he responded with d5. I played the Zukertort variation here, founded by Johannes Zukertort. He responded with pawn g6, trying to fianchetto his bishop. Pawn c4 is by far the strongest move here. Pawn takes c4 is a mistake since it loses the center for black, even though the center can be claimed back later if played correctly. He fianchettoed his bishop. At first I want to play bishop e3, since the c4 pawn can be taken later, but I just took the pawn first. He plays knight f6, attacking my e4 pawn. There are many possibilities here, such as knight c3, castle, e5, but I went with knight c3, since it gives the most advantage. After thinking for a while, he played knight g4, a mistake because that move doesn't do anything. It can't prevent bishop e3 since h3 just kicks the knight, which I played here. He moves his knight back to f6. After that, I castle my king to safety. He castled too. After thinking for a while, I played rook e1 to support my e4 pawn. He plays knight a6, which to me is a bad move since the bishop can take it, and he can have a bad position. The best move for him is c6. I played bishop e3, planning to push d5 or e5. He plays knight h5, which seemed like has to use except for getting the knight to f4 or g7. I played queen c2, providing support for the e4 pawn, which isn't exactly the best move. The best move for me is e5 to block the knight from coming back to f6 and getting space. Pawn c5 is a tactic to disrupt my pawn structure. If I take on c5, he can take the pawn back with a few correct moves. Rook d1 threatens a queen and give me the open d-file. He takes my pawn on d4. There are two possibilities. One is knight takes d4, and the other one is bishop takes d4. I went with knight takes so that I can attack the queen, and the position looks better for me. We both trade pieces here. Rook takes d4 is a good move, as well as bishop takes d4, which I played in the scenario. He plays queen c7, but bishop e6 was better, because queen c7 has a lot of attack moves for white. I played knight d5, threatening the queen. He plays queen d7, not exactly the best move. I played queen c1 so that I could move my queen to h6, threatening checkmate. He plays f5, which is obviously a total blunder because it hangs mate in 1, with knight takes e7, but I played knight f6 instead to get a free queen. I won again this time, and this game was also easy for me. I won with 86.1% accuracy, since I missed mate in 1 and an estimated yellow of 2,300. Now, let's move on to my casual game here. I matched against a guy named Nuxenci with a weird name. His level is higher than me, but let's see. He starts with a queen's pawn opening here, which I responded with knight f6, the Indian game. There will be many variations to the Indian game for white, such as c4, knight f3, bishop f4, etc., etc. He responded with bishop f4, and then I played pawn d5, which is called the accelerated London system. He plays the Chigorin variation, trying to set up a London system formation. I played c6 here, so that it stops white from playing knight b5. He plays knight h3, a mistake, because he will have a double pawn after my bishop takes. e6 and g6 are both good moves here, both opening up space for the bishop. I tried to trade my bishop here, but he hangs his bishop, which I take immediately. He kicks my bishop, which I move my bishop back to d3. After pondering for a while, he plays knight a4, which I think he is trying to move on to c5. c3 is a huge mistake because of pawn b5, but I missed it. It's not much of a big deal because it just gains me a pawn after pawn b5, knight c5, knight takes, pawn takes and bishop takes. He plays b5, trying to get his knight to c5, and I play queen c2, threatening bishop takes h2 check, which he missed. He's forced to play kh1, and after that I move my bishop back for safety. He plays pawn a4 after thinking for a long time. I respond with b6, kicking the knight out. He plays f5, completely hanging the bishop. I take the knight, of course, and he takes the pawn back. I move my bishop back, even though chess.com wants me to sack my knight on c4. He plays rook b1, getting the open b file. I responded with rook fb8. After some thought, he played queen c1, ready to push c4. I played h6 for escape for my king. He plays c4, of course. I took his rook on b1. And he takes my rook back with queen b1, and I move my rook to b8, gaining a freak open b file. He plays queen a2, still supporting the c4 pawn. I sacrifice my knight on c5, because I know I will win, and I will lose only 1 point. Since knight equals 3, and 2 pawns equals 2, he plays rook c1, threatening pawn takes d5 after I move my knight. I missed a good move here, knight d3, rerouted my knight to b5, defending my d5 pawn. Instead, I played knight b3. He plays rook c3. Not exactly the best move, but it still threatens a d-pawn. I played queen b3, defending my knight and stopping the pin from my rook to the queen. He takes my d-pawn, which I took back with my e-pawn. He pushes e4. I don't know what that was for. I take it back with my knight. He hangs his rook with bishop f3. I completely missed it here because of chess blindness and took the pawn on d4. He took my knight on e4 with his bishop. I take it back with my pawn. He plays queen a1. I reply with a forced trade, queen b1. He plays rook b1, and I can trade the queens. I push f5, protecting my e-pawn. He plays h4. I push e3, threatening promotion. He plays pawn h5. I played pawn e2, threatening promotion, and he plays king g1, knight c2, forking the rook and the e1 square for my promotion. He plays rook c1, and I promote my pawn with a rook instead of a queen just to troll him a bit. He takes my rook, and my knight takes it back. He resigned. This game was easy for me, and right now I'm currently unbeatable. I analyzed my game on chess.com, and it said I have a 92.4% accuracy with an estimated yellow of 2,450. Now, let's move on to my 2 bot games. Now, I'm going to play the hard bot over here. There's a storyline for a chess bot? Alrighty, let's play him. I start the game with d4, the queen's pawn opening, and he responds with knight f6. This is a smaller variation of the Indian game called the Black Knight's Tango. Knight e4 is a mistake because of pawn d5, knight b8, queen c2, and white will push e4, but I missed that. Pawn d5 is also another mistake because of pawn takes, queen takes, and queen b3, which I missed and played e3 instead. Black castles queenside, protecting his king. After I castled, he moved king b8, and then I pushed c4, attacking his queen. I fianchettoed my bishop, and he plays f5, a mistake because of h3, and white gains more space. I played queen b3 here, attacking his knight and pinning the knight. Pawn e6 to defend his bishop, but pawn e5 is better. I use my f-rook to get the d-file. He retreats his knight after I pushed it with a3. I think for a while and played pawn d5, attacking the knight. He takes my pawn, and I take it back with bishop d5. He moves his knight, both attacking my queen and defending the b7 pawn. My queen and bishop is on the a1, h8 line, both attacking the g7 pawn. Now the queen comes to defend the knight, but that is a mistake. I found the best move here, pawn c5, attacking the bishop. He moves his bishop back to e7, possibly playing bishop f6. I found the best move here. Queen b4. The queen can't move anywhere else or the knight will get taken. He attacks my bishop here, trapping his own knight instead of moving it back to c6. We both trade rooks. He takes my pawn on c5, sacrificing his bishop. I take his bishop instead of his knight. I took a free pawn on g7 with my bishop. He sacrifices his rook. At this point, I'm so confused, and then he sacrifices knight. He plays h6, which gives me a free checkmate. I won my first game against the bot, and now let's play my second and last game. I analyzed my game, and it said I have a percentage of 85.5 accuracy and an estimated yellow of 2,300. Now, let's move on to my last game. Alrighty, this is my last game. I was going to play knight f3 or e4, but instead, I played b4. He plays knight f6, so I fianchettoed my bishop. I pushed my b-pawn to attack his knight, and he sacrificed a knight since it could be trapped by pawn c4. The knights have nowhere to move. He played knight e4, and I trapped his knight. He played d5, and I took a free knight. The evaluation bar is so high. d3, and he plays knight d6, which is an okay move. Knight c3, and he pushes e5, trying to grab the center. He continues it while I take his c4 pawn, and he takes my pawn back. But don't worry, by pushing c5, I can take it back. We trade queens and pawns, and I trade my bishop for his knight. After that, I try to stop the d-pawn from advancing with bishop d3, and he plays bishop g4 for no reason. I kicked his bishop, and it moved back to f5. We trade pieces, and he pushed e3. I pinned the pawn, and he moved his king. And it's a back rank mate. Thanks you guys for watching.